In the webinar that you are about to watch, we dove into the wonderful world of deliverability. Now, it's not always the most exciting topic to be discussing, but it's really important because we need to understand how our behavior is being viewed by the people that control where our emails go. So, not only did we build a groundwork of just giving you some terms and some topics, but we talked about what's changing right now, what is BombBomb doing amidst those changes, and what can you do to be as effective with your email as possible. Enjoy. Good morning, everybody. We've already got our numbers climbing up. I know I've said this before, but I'm always impressed by the people that are like ready, on time, waiting. And as soon as we launch it, there's numbers flying in here. But good morning, good morning, good morning. Happy February. Oh my gosh. I'll tell you what, January was a wild ride around my parts. So I am very thankful that we're into a new month. So good morning. We're going to give it a few months. If you want to hop into chat, just, say you're here. Let us know you're here. Let us know where you're joining from. It's always fun to see the locations. We sometimes get people all the way over in Europe and other countries, but we've got a wide representation in the US and Canada here. So let us know where you're at. It'd be good to kind of hear from everybody. I always give it a minute or two to kind of let everybody hop in. While we're doing that, let's go over some of the housekeeping stuff. First and foremost, because we have some amazing faces with us on this webinar, I am excited to introduce you to some people that are helping us out. Tara, how are you? Good morning. People who have been here before, they'll recognize you. How are you today?
Hey guys, I'm so excited to be here. I'll be chatting with you in the chat.
So Tara's manning the chat and the Q&A and all of those things. So for those of you that are new to using Zoom or being on one of our webinars, it's all about the conversation. We really, really want to have a good conversation. Our community, our BombBomb family is incredible. So use them as resources. So the way we describe it is chat. As you can see here, it gets crazy flying when we got a couple hundred people in here. We're all chatting stuff in. So use that as ways to communicate with each other, talk to each other. If you've got questions and you want input from other people, throw that in there because it's really, really cool to communicate and learn from the people that are using video on a regular basis. Q&A is the other option that you'll see at the bottom of your screen as well. That's for if it's something where you go, oh, I don't want them to miss this. This is really important. I think other people have this question. That's what Tara's going to keep a really close eye on. So make sure you do that. We always try to leave a little bit of time or give some time at the end for Q&A. If we don't get to your question right at that time, don't stress. We'll do our best to get to as many as we can. But throw them in there. Tara's here manning those, keeping an eye on those. So thank you. We appreciate it. She's a rock star when it comes to that. Kelsey is a new face to a lot of you here. Kelsey's actually been with BombBomb for, I think we decided yesterday it was over 3 years, around 3 years, somewhere in the range.
Something like that.
So she started on our support team, answering questions, solving tickets, and then she's actually moved up to what we call our tier 2 support team, which is really dealing with a lot of our enterprise clients, a lot of our bigger clients, bigger issues, bigger problems, all of those sort of things. So she really is an expert. And the reason we've got her on this webinar specifically about deliverability is because she's worked with this issue a lot with some of our bigger teams and some of those. So Kelsey, how are you? Give us a little intro. Tell us a little bit about yourself for all the people that don't know you yet.
Yeah, thanks. Good morning. As Kevin said, I have been at BombBomb almost 3 years now. 1.5 years, maybe 2 on the tier 2 team. And we work with our bigger customers, our bigger teams, enterprise customers. But we also do a lot of work with our internal product teams. And when I graduated college, I graduated with an emphasis on computer information systems and business management. So being on the tier 2 team has kind of been a cool balance between those two things.
Yeah. See, I'm learning something new about you and I've known you for years. So that's awesome. And like I said, she's been in this conversation for a long time. So that's why I was like, we need to have somebody on here that can dive into this. So Kelsey, thank you for doing this. I'm excited for the expertise and the knowledge you're going to bring kind of above and beyond what I even understand about all of these elements. So before we dive in, because I know we're a few minutes in and I always want to make sure I'm really respecting all of your time, I want to give a few caveats just from some things that we've experienced. So one, this email is all about deliverability. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen so I can we can get started on some of the visuals and some of those pieces as well. But I want to make sure that we're positioning this because I know there's a lot of webinars on this topic right now that are covering a whole gamut of different things. I want you to know the goal of our approach to this is to try to make this as digestible as possible. I know there are some of you on here that are probably much more tech savvy and are going to have really specific technical questions. Feel free to ask them. We may not dive into the nitty gritty of all of these elements because we want everybody here to understand this content as much as they can and really understand what the changes are and how it's affecting them. So just keep that in mind. If we don't dive into a a big, deep technical issue. It's because we're trying to keep this as digestible for people as we possibly can. The other quick thing, and I already mentioned chat and Q&A and some of those sort of things, we really pride ourselves here at BombBomb on having an amazing community. And I mentioned it that there is so much knowledge, there is so much value in the people that are either using BombBomb or that come to these webinars. So let's keep it really positive in the chat. We've had a couple of situations over the last few months where somebody comes in and kind of brings things down. Thankfully, there's always some of you that stand up and kind of take that head on, but we just don't want to have that space in here. So don't use chat for something that's like, I'm trying to sell a different product. If you see anything like that in chat, that's not a BombBomb thing. We'll do our best to monitor that and make sure that those things are not taking over. But let's keep our chats really positive. Let's keep our chats kind. Let's keep our chats supportive of each other, because let's be real, the world needs a heck of a lot more of that, and we want this to be a space for that. So last piece, and then we're diving into the agenda, and we're going to get going on this, is absolutely there will be a recording. I see Clem already chatted in with that question. We do record this. We will send that to you in the next few days with a follow-up email. So if you ever get overwhelmed or you feel like you missed something or you have to leave early, do not stress. I promise you we will send you that recording. And if you ever don't see that email or you miss it and you want to review it, go to YouTube. We put all of our webinars and our content on YouTube, on our website, so you can find that content there. So really, really excited. Thank you all for jumping in. I've seen people from literally all over the country, all over the world that are in here. So I'm excited to dive in and get started on this and start talking about what we're doing here. So here's our agenda for today. We're going to be talking about kind of the basics of deliverability. You know, I always like to build a little bit of a groundwork of understanding. Really what I want to do is just make sure we understand what are some terms you're going to hear a lot in this webinar and a lot that affect this. And as we keep talking through them, just so we understand that we're all on the same page with these kind of details and these sort of things. What's changing? There are some big changes that have gone into effect very recently from some of the big email deliverability companies, the email providers. And so we're going to talk about that. We're going to introduce that and let you know what's changed. Then we're going to show you what we have done and are doing to counteract that, to make sure that you guys are taken care of so that you're not having any interruptions to the email sending that's going out. And last but not least, I always like to give actionable things as much as possible. So what should you be doing? How can you help yourself? Because really, it is up to you. We can do a lot of things on our end, but if you're not behaving in a way that's going to be recognized well, we're stuck at some point. If you keep doing things that are going to negatively affect your deliverability, there's only so much we can do on that. So let's start this. I always like to throw these in if I possibly can. I'm going to see if I can launch a poll here. Let me see if I can pull this up because I don't know where I put it. Here we go. All right, so I've got a question for you. I'm going to launch it so you guys can see it. So just kind of a fun question to get us started in this, and it's also going to build a mutual understanding here. What percentage of emails sent land in a recipient's inbox? So we've got a bunch of different numbers there, but I'm really curious as to what people think on this. Kelsey, I didn't even ask you this beforehand. What do you think? What do you think the percentage of emails sent that actually land in people's inboxes?
I mean, the kind of cheat answer here is that it would depend on a lot of factors. Depend on recipients. I know that's a cop out.
Well, we're getting a bunch of answers here. I get to see them all a little bit ahead of you. We've already got 60% of people jumping in. So I'll give it a few more seconds here. So get your answers in, and then I'll share these with you so you all can see. Because we've got a pretty good gamut. There's a couple people that have very, very hopeful personalities. I can already tell. So let's end this right now, and I'll share this with you guys. Thank you to the 5 of you that think 100% of emails actually get to inboxes. I love your outlook on life and that you are so hopeful in that regard. That's unfortunately not true. So the actual answer is 83%. 83% of emails actually land in the inbox. What's interesting is a huge majority of you picked the 68%. So that's actually good news, right? It's good that we go, okay, more stuff's getting there. But what's cool and what we're going to talk about today is that there are outside people watching this and reviewing this and making sure that it's being well respected, but we're also in control of it. And the other thing I want to jump into before we start jumping into the specific deliverability things is one thing I hear a lot is email's dead. Nobody's using email anymore, right? Kelsey, I see you nodding. I'm sure you have to talk with people about this all the time. Email is not dead in the slightest. I mean, you can look at these numbers, 4 billion daily email users. Holy cow, that's insane, right? 374 billion emails are sent and received every single day. I cannot even fathom what that number is. It's so large, right? So this is still being used a lot. I think the important ones to read here is it's not all about volume because we know there's a lot of junk out there as well. But 38% of brands are increasing their email budget in 2024 because they're seeing potential there. And 77% of marketers have seen an increase in email engagement in the last 12 months. So it's cool to see things kind of on an uptick and people starting to reinvest. I think it's one of those things where the money goes, it's showing that people are really seeing some potential there. They're not going to throw money at something that they don't think is going to be valuable for them. So let's just kind of keep that all in mind as we're talking through this. Of course, you can use BombBomb in with social media, with text messaging, with some different things through our system. We are really focused on email today. And I do also want to let you know some of the what can you do's are going to be specific to those of you that are emailing directly out of BombBomb. That does require a BombBomb Plus or higher subscription level. So those of you that have BombBomb Essentials, our base level membership, don't leave. There's still going to be a lot of value in this so that you can control your deliverability from whatever system that you're using. But know that towards the end of this and some of the actionable things for you all, we are going to be talking a little bit more specifically about if you're emailing out of BombBomb directly, if you're sending directly from our mobile app or from our email system that we provide for you. I think I've covered all those things. So let's just go in with that base level, with that understanding of some of the things we're talking about. So let's build a good baseline here. Let's start talking about what are some of the terms that you need to know when we're talking about email deliverability. And I know, I'm very aware, this is not the most exciting topic in the entire world. I very much understand that, but it's really, really important. So let's talk through some of these. Third-party senders. What is a third-party sender? The best way that I know to describe this as simply as possible is it's somebody that is not your actual email provider. So what is an email provider? Anybody that you went and built an email address in their system. Gmail, Yahoo, Outlook. Those of us that are still stuck in 1990, Hotmail, right? That's a version of Outlook. And yes, I do still actually have a Hotmail email address. You're welcome. Those are all email providers because they're the ones actually building the email and hosting that email address for you. Third-party senders are people like BombBomb. AOL, there you go, Steve. Yeah, there's still some AOL addresses out there. So BombBomb is a third-party sender. A CRM, if you use a CRM that you send emails out of, they do not host that email address for you. You're probably using an email address that you brought into that system from somewhere else. So they are third-party senders. I don't bring that up as in you have to know all the intricacies of that, but just know that we are judged differently than if you're sending directly from Gmail because they are your host, your email host. Kelsey, did I do that justice? Is that a decently accurate way to describe that?
Yeah, I think that's a really, really good basic way to describe it.
Okay, so let's talk about consent a little bit because this is something that we ask in BombBomb when you're bringing people in or doing some of those sort of things, but there's multiple versions of consent. And really the biggest way I want you to think about this is permission, right? What permission do I have to send to these people? You are going to hear time and time and time again in this webinar, we are a permission-based sender. Do not send emails out of BombBomb to people that have not given you permission to do that. Why? You're going to get really bad responses. You're going to get bounce rates. You're going to get all these negative things that will negatively impact you. So we have to have consent. Now, the two different ways that we look at that is express and is implied. So express, you can see there, the contact actually opted into your communication. Maybe they filled out a form on your website or you met them in person and they said, oh yeah, I would love to receive your things. That is express consent. That is saying, I want Kevin to email me. That's ideal. If we could only send to those people, we'd have great deliverability because they know us and we've built that connection. However, there are other situations implied. You have reason to believe that you have permission to send this person a message. So I even think of implied, and I used to describe this for those of you that work in the real estate world, of maybe something like somebody went onto Zillow and submitted their information and said, I want to hear back from a realtor. To me, I kind of looked at as implied consent. They're giving express consent to Zillow, but they didn't say, I want Kevin's emails. They said, I want to hear back from a realtor. You as that realtor absolutely have implied permission and consent to believe that they are okay with you reaching out to them. So that's kind of a different way to think about it that I think is, I'm big on metaphors and real world situations and those sort of things. But make sure ultimately what I want you to know is, regardless of which one of these applies to, make sure that you have this permission. If we don't have this permission, we should not be sending to these people. And we'll dive a little bit deeper into that as well. Sending reputation. This is a big one, and we're going to dive into this more on the next slide. So I'm not going to cover it a ton here. But essentially, this is a score that is assigned to you by email providers, by the big dogs in the email space, right? You're going to hear me see Gmail, Yahoo, Outlook a lot in this webinar, because really they're the ones that control a huge swath of this. They have such a big footprint in this world. They are building and watching your sending reputation. So we're going to dive into a little bit more of what builds that and how they're determining that score on the next slide here. But just know this is a term we're going to use a lot. Kelsey, I'm going to give you a chance on this because you described this one to me, the difference between an abuse complaint and an unsubscribe. I think a lot of us, and I'll speak for everybody, kind of sort of group those together a little bit. How are they different? Could you give us a little bit of a understanding of the difference between those?
Yeah, I think it's easy to think of those things as really similar because they are typically right next to each other. At the bottom of an email, you'll see those two buttons, abuse or unsubscribe. But they are very, very different. So an abuse complaint, it typically involves some sort of malicious intent or basically that there was no permission involved. So if you are receiving an email that you didn't sign up for it, or it does seem like it may be a scam, something like that, that's typically the use case when you would click on abuse. But an unsubscribe is more of kind of an even ground. That could be when you did want someone's emails at one time, you had signed up, you were interested in their emails, but something changed. And so you just no longer want to receive those emails. And that would be the use case when you would unsubscribe. So because they are different use cases, they are viewed a little bit differently in terms of sending reputation, where an abuse complaint is a pretty negative mark, but an unsubscribe is kind of a neutral thing.
Yeah. And I think it's really important also. I want you to think about this conversation as well from a recipient standpoint. We are all people that receive emails as well, right? So a lot of these decisions are made to protect recipients and us as recipients. So keep that in mind. If you're getting emails, don't just file abuses on every email that you happen to not want to read at that moment, because that is negatively affecting the person on the other end. If it's something that you did log into, you did opt into, and just aren't interested at this exact moment, unsubscribe is a great opportunity that does not hurt the person. They're not taking advantage of it. Maybe you're just not interested anymore, right? So really good to know the differences between those two. Bounces is a term that I think we hear quite a bit, but what is that? Essentially, you sent an email to an email address that is not active or did not go through for one reason or another. Maybe it's an invalid email address. You wrote it out wrong and it's not actually a real email. Maybe it's been closed down. Maybe it's, not, I'm going to show you some examples in my account of people that used to work for BombBomb and had their BombBomb email addresses and left the company. So those are no longer valid email addresses. So that email will bounce when it's trying to be sent. So basically, it's the email provider saying, sorry, we cannot deliver that because this email address does not exist. It doesn't work anymore. So keep that in mind. Bounces are a good thing to review as well. I do want to touch really quickly on the term spam. I think it's a trigger term in the email space. We all know what spam emails are. We all group stuff into place. What I want to bring this up, and the reason that Kelsey and I thought it was important, was to really decipher the difference. A spam email, a definition that I found that I thought was really good, is unsolicited and unwanted junk email sent out in a bulk fashion to an indiscriminate recipient list. And I thought that was really good because it's essentially saying somebody got a massive list of things and is blowing these people up with emails that they didn't sign up for, they didn't give consent for, they don't want. They're it's like the spray and pray method. I'm going to send a bunch out and hope a few people respond and actually go on this. Those are spam emails, the malicious emails, the scamming stuff, trying to get email from or like money. And we know that's unfortunately a massive industry right now in business, is people taking advantage of people. Those are spam emails. You receiving an email from somebody that you signed up for that you're just not interested in those emails anymore, those are not spam emails, and we don't want to treat them the same because they're not malicious. They're not trying to do anything wrong. You have maybe just gone different directions and are not interested in that content anymore. So again, let's keep this in mind as just kind of our baselines for this. Last but not least is account hold. And I'm not going to dive into this a lot. This is kind of a BombBomb specific thing on if our sending reputation starts to go south, as if one of you all of a sudden is having issues with your sending reputation, we at BombBomb will put a hold on your account while we figure that out. And we'll talk about that in a little bit and give you kind of the process and why we would do something there. So those are kind of the basic terms I want you to know as we continue on this. Kelsey, is there anything I missed or anything I maybe didn't describe accurately that was confusing in there? Or do you think we're, feel pretty good with that baseline there?
I think the only thing I would highlight as far as consent, the big difference between express and implied is that express involves some sort of action. That contact took some sort of action to say, yes, I definitely want your emails, whether that was checking a box when they were filling out a form, or whether it was, telling you in person, yes, I love your emails. That involves some sort of specific action, whereas implied typically doesn't involve that specific action.
Right. Awesome. Thank you for deciphering that. I appreciate that. All right, let's spend a few minutes here on sending reputation. I told you we were going to talk about this. I'm going to go through these, and then Kelsey, please add the deeper context and knowledge that you have in here. But we already discussed that this is defined by the email provider. BombBomb is not building the sending reputation. We are not judging what you're sending and those sort of things, other than we're making sure that you're abiding by the things we know are going to trigger this score. Basically, it's an overall score based on how your recipients react, so engagement to your emails that affects where and if your emails are delivered. Essentially, the better our sending reputation is, the more likely our emails are to get where they're supposed to go. The worse that gets, the more protections are going to be put against emails sent out of our email inbox, because somebody up at the higher levels has started to deem these may not be safe. This person or this email address is sending content that is not kind of fitting within that. So they've built this sending reputation score to kind of build that together. Now, there's a lot of factors in it, and I want to go over these pretty quickly because I know we always like to get to the actionable stuff as quickly as we possibly can in these. But engagement is a big one, and this can go both ways, good and bad engagement. So are people opening your emails? Are they expressing interest in the emails? How much time are they spending in the email? Believe it or not, that is something that is watched to a degree. Are people opening and deleting it right away, or are they spending time? Are they really spending time in that email? Are they interacting with any links? This is one of the beautiful things about videos, about having video in an email, is it gains interest with people. People are more likely to click on links. We have seen a definite increase in emails sent just normally with text and a link and videos in a link. When people click to play your video with BombBomb, when you send it through our system, that counts as a video link. That is a click link. That shows higher engagement. That is helping your sending reputation when people are showing that higher engagement. So if there is quick timeout, if they're not sending long, again, that can negatively affect this as well. So engagement is a big one. Abuse complaints. We already talked about this a little bit, but Kelsey, show us or describe a little bit. You don't need to re-describe those two things. How do abuse complaints and unsubscribes differ in how it's factored in for your sending reputation?
Yeah. Abuse complaints are typically always viewed as a bad mark on your reputation, because it does carry a lot of weight, because it is someone saying, I didn't sign up for these emails, or this content is not good. So it is a poor mark on reputation, but an unsubscribe is viewed as more of a neutral thing.
Okay, so there you go. So that's, again, as a recipient, keep that in mind when you're marking those on emails, but also make sure that we have these options and that we're doing this so that we don't want people to think we're abusing when we're just, maybe this was not an interesting email. Maybe the topic wasn't as timely for them or whatever it may be. How are bounces affected? We just talked about what bounces are, but how are those affected in the sending reputation? Are those a negative mark on your sending reputation? How does that factor in, Kelsey?
Yeah, those would also be a negative mark. They aren't, from my understanding, weighted as heavily as an abuse complaint, since it isn't someone, actually saying, this is bad content, but it is still viewed negatively as far as reputation, because it implies that you might not be keeping up to date on your list. You might have some old contacts in there, things with typos, stuff like that. So it is still a bad mark on reputation.
Okay, so there's almost like a hierarchy. Abuse complaints are a big, strong negative mark. Bounces don't look great on you, so we want to make sure we're maintaining those. Unsubscribes are kind of an even keel sort of thing. It's a great way for somebody to say, I no longer want these, in a kind way that doesn't necessarily reflect negatively on you. So know that all of these are treated different. One thing that I think is really important that I learned, I don't even remember when, but about sending reputation, your sending reputation follows you. It is not just tied to this one email address. Why? Because it can be measured based on your email address. It can also be measured based on your IP address, on your domain. There are multiple factors in how they gather this information about you. So no, you cannot start an email address, blast out stuff, spam people, do all this negative stuff, close that down, open another one, and you're starting scot-free. You aren't. It's just like, think about a social reputation. I guess you could move cities and move states, but who's to say somebody doesn't know somebody that knew you back when, kind of thing. This is something that people talk about. Well, guess what? The companies are talking about this too. You can't just leave Gmail and go to Outlook and everything is clear. They will still be able to tell, wait a second, this person had some bad practices in the past that we need to watch for. So there are elements of that carry over. I think another part, especially for me as a people pleaser and my personality, is to also know this affects more than just you. When you send a bad email, let's just say out of BombBomb, to a lot of people, we get a bunch of maybe some abuse complaints, bounces, all sorts of things. This does affect you and your sending reputation. It also affects BombBombs because we are the ones sending that on your behalf. So this does affect the place that this is coming from. For us third-party senders, we have to monitor this really closely to make sure that we're not allowing people to send out things that are going to negatively affect us as well. And it also can affect the recipients, right? If they're getting a bunch of these things, it's something that affects your daily life. We know, I think the number that I've heard recently is the average number of emails we're getting in America on a daily basis is over 120 emails a day. If we're getting a bunch of junk stuff, I mean, how many times do we go through our email box, delete, 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 to have one or two emails that we actually wanted? Let's start being conscious about this. We've talked about human-centered forever with BombBomb. Let's be conscious of this. Let's be aware that what we're sending is wanted by the people that we're sending it out to. So those are some of the things that compile that sending reputation for you and will affect it. Now, let's talk about what happens if all of a sudden it goes south with BombBomb. So again, this is for those of you that are emailing directly out of BombBomb itself. Here's kind of the process, and I just want to give you a heads up. I'm going to go through this quickly because it doesn't apply to everybody, but I want you to know the process and what happens. If you are flagged automatically by our system to say this person may have done something bad, maybe you sent out one email that went over some of our thresholds. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to put a hold on your account. That doesn't mean we close down your account. It doesn't mean we delete content. We don't remove contacts. We don't do anything. Basically, what we do is we send you an email and we put a banner up in your web account that says, hey, we noticed something that didn't look awesome. We need you to reach out to us and start a conversation about this so we can figure out what caused this, right? So here's some of the thresholds that we abide by. Abuse complaints. This is, again, not a decision BombBomb has to make. This is something we have to abide by. One abuse complaint for every 1,000 emails sent, we will start to look at that. So abuse complaints are really, really strong, and we have to take them very, very seriously. Bounces. If you have bounces above 15%, so if you send 100 emails and 15 of those bounce back to you, it's showing us, wait a second, they're not cleaning up their list. They're not staying on top of things. We need to kind of check that because those negatively affect. And then unengaged contacts. Are you sending a bunch of emails that nobody is engaging with? And are we doing it time and time and time and time again? Those are things that negatively affect it. So those are some of the automatic things that our system is watching for to make sure that we're abiding by those things. Now, again, we don't close anything. We put it on a hold, and there you can see kind of the process of how we work through this. Initially, you have to take the first step to get your account out of hold. You need to reach out to us, and there are instructions in the email that's sent to you that basically says, hey, we noticed something recent. You need to respond and say maybe what you think might have happened. It doesn't mean you need to know all the ins and outs of all these things and understand completely, but it's worthwhile for you to take a second, go back into your tracking in BombBomb and start looking at this. How was my last send? Was my last send not really good? What engagement did I get? Some of those sort of things. And then you reply back to us with what your thoughts are. Once you've done that, we review that. We start looking in the back end of your account to review what may have flagged it, what's looking at that. And then we go back and forth to make sure that we're taking some steps so that this doesn't happen again in the future. Things like cleaning lists, examining your recent sends, different things like that are some of those processes there. Once we feel like you have taken the right steps, you've taken initiative, we feel comfortable about it, the hold's gone and you're back to sending just like you were before. So note that we're not just going to keep putting holds on your account over and over. This does build up, right? It's a reputation. So if we're always putting holds on your account, that will escalate as time goes by there. But Kelsey, I know you're somebody that's had to work through these holds. is this a decently, I know it's high level, but accurate kind of representation of that process and how those are put on?
Yeah, this is great. And I think the biggest thing to keep in mind with holds is that our primary goal for those is to find some action, something that needs to be changed, whether that's in your contact list or in your sending habits, finding something that needs to be changed and making that change, so that we'll feel better about your sending reputation and our sending reputation going forward. But the specific action that we need, that can really be dependent on your situation, and you know your contact list better than us. And so that's why it does require a little bit of a conversation to figure out what would be the most beneficial change. But that's usually the biggest thing to keep in mind, is that we are looking for some sort of change prior to lifting that hold.
And note too that our goal is to help. Our goal is to get you back to sending. We just want to make sure that we're all doing it responsibly, because again, your sending reflects on BombBomb as well, right? This is a community together that it affects. So I found this quote. It just made me laugh a little bit. Thought it was kind of a fun way to lighten up as we jump into some of the actual changes. But a bad email reputation is like a hangover. It's hard to get rid of, and it makes everything else hurt. So think about that, right? It's easy to get to this point. It's hard to work your way out. So we want to be really conscious before we kind of get to that. So let's talk really directly on what's changing right now. Why is this a conversation that's happening so universally from a lot of different companies? Again, way bigger than BombBomb. This is not BombBomb making changes. These are things that we're now having to abide by. Essentially, what I want you guys to know, and again, this is a little bit more high level, Gmail and Yahoo are driving this big time right now. You can see that quote at the top there. I didn't put it in quotes, but this is something that's from some of their releases where they're saying, we can't guarantee the content of every email. We can't monitor those, but we can guarantee the source of the email and that it's actually coming from who they say it's coming from. There's a big thing going on right now. It's been going on forever, called spoofing, right? Where a third-party sender like BombBomb or a CRM or a Constant Contact or whatever company it is, right, that's sending on your behalf, essentially says, I am sending from kevinandrews@gmail.com when I'm not actually kevinandrews@gmail.com. We are taking your email address and sending on your behalf, and we're spoofing that email address. That's not going to fly anymore. They are basically saying we will not allow that because we want better visibility into, is this actually coming from the place you're sending, or is this another party that's kind of sending on behalf of you, on behalf of that email address? They are also starting to get really, really specific and limit what they're going to allow as far as abuse complaints, as far as some of this content. So you can see here, you have to keep your abuse rate below 0.1%. So that is one abuse complaint out of every 1,000 emails. Now you can see that's very consistent with when we put on a hold as well, right? So we are putting these controls on as well to make sure that we're monitoring this and helping you in this process, because it abides by what they have to go by. For reference, the old numbers before this changed, I believe this change went into effect February 1st, if I'm not mistaken. So within the last week, here's when Gmail and Yahoo initiated this. Previously, it was 0.4%. So 4 out of every 1,000 emails. It may still feel like a low number. That's a pretty big jump. That is a lot to go from like, oh yeah, you can have a few here and there to like 1 and we're watching, you know? So we've got to make sure that we're being really, really cautious, and we're going to give you some tips and tricks on what you can do. Another one that I actually really like about this change is this idea of requiring easy unsubscription and unsubscribing. Have you ever gone through that process where you click unsubscribe in an email and then you have to log into your account and then you have to go through these 5 steps and then you have to select which emails are you unsubscribing from? And it all of a sudden becomes this headache where you're like, oh gosh, I don't even have time for this right now. And so you don't, and you keep getting these emails that you don't want, right? They're changing that. It now has to be one click. I click unsubscribe and I am unsubscribed. The other thing I've noticed is when I've actually done this with other companies, I keep getting emails for a few weeks before it maybe starts to taper off, or I have to do the process again. That's not going to fly anymore. 2 days. They have to process your unsubscribe request within 2 days. That is the new rule. So one click, making it easy on the recipient, and it has to be processed quickly. And then this probably doesn't apply to most of us here, but a lot of these changes they make are really cracking down on bulk senders, the companies that are sending over 5,000 emails a day, right? So big marketing companies that have huge lists, very much on those spam senders that we talked about earlier, of cracking down on those things, controlling those things to make sure that their recipients are seeing some of those. So Kelsey, what did I miss there? What are the things that you think are important to maybe even reiterate something that I said that are really going to affect the people that we're talking to today?
Yeah, I think the big thing to reiterate is that it is Gmail and Yahoo making these changes, and so we kind of have to follow suit, since they're kind of the big players. Um, and so this 0.1% abuse complaint threshold, that definitely does seem tight, and it is. But because that's being made by Gmail and Yahoo, we do have to follow suit there and kind of fall in line with what they request.
Okay. Yeah, that's good to remember. And also, again, think of it from a recipient standpoint. This is going to help all of us have a better recipient experience in emails. It's going to start eliminating more and more of this junk. It's hard from a sender standpoint. We've got to be really diligent in making sure we're staying up it but from a recipient standpoint, this is going to be really, really helpful. So here's where I want to, okay, we just sort of dropped the new changes and some of those sort of things. What's BombBomb doing to help you? Surprise, surprise, this is not new news to us. we have known about this. We have people that are monitoring all of our deliverability and have been that have known about this for months. We've known that this is coming. So don't stress out. We already have a system in place to help you with this. And what we're calling it is our send on behalf of system, right? So it still allows you to bring in your kevin.andrews@mydomain.com email address that you signed up for your BombBomb account. We now actually take that and we have to change the email address a little bit so that it actually, it actually comes out of a slightly different email address to the recipients. Now, I know that sounds big and jarring, but I want you to know one thing. The from name is still the same. So it will still come from Kevin Andrews, even though that email address is reflected a little bit differently. And two, if somebody replies back to this email, it still comes back to your normal email inbox. The other thing, and I put a little bullet point there, if you have not noticed anything in the last few weeks with BombBomb, you're still sending and you're still seeing things like normal, guess what? We've been running this system for the last few weeks. So don't stress. If you have not noticed anything, things are going to keep working just as you're used to. The only real difference is that we have had to adjust to abide by these rules. We've had to adjust that from email address a little bit, but the from name and the reply tos are going to be exactly the same in that process. I do also want to let you know with that unsubscription side of things, we already build an unsubscribe button into your emails that abides by these rules. You don't need to worry about that. You don't need to stress about that. So don't think and go, oh shoot, I've got to make sure those are in all my emails. We've got you covered. When you're sending out a BombBomb, we have you covered from those elements. So just know we've got you. We are taking care of you. It's already running. We ramped it up slowly to make sure it would be as ease of use for everybody here. So just know that. We want to know that you're taken care of from a BombBomb perspective. But I think it's also good for those of you that are even BombBomb Essentials users. If you're sending out of other email inboxes, these are still some good things to know. And still these next kind of like best practices, the what can you do section of this are still very applicable, no matter where you're sending from directly. So let's jump into that. I know we've got about a little over 20 minutes left. So let's jump in to what are some things that you can do and how can you control this? Because I do want you to know, while these bigger companies are making changes and monitoring things, it is still very much your responsibility to keep your sending reputation up. It is on you. So here's some things that we can do. And we've mentioned this a little bit. Clean, 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 clean. Keep up to date with your email lists. I cannot emphasize this enough on how important this is. As I was researching and learning for this, one of the big things that came up is what is a timeline to kind of roughly use? From a lot of different marketing companies and a lot of different research I found on this, every 6 months, you should be reviewing your lists and looking at this content and looking at it. Now, what are some things you should review for? I've given you some bullet points that you can start to use. The first one, pretty broad. Do you know this person? I think it's a pretty straight up thing. If I'm reading through and I see an email list with a name and I have no idea who that person is, that's probably not somebody I should be sending to, right? Either I got them at an event however many years ago, whatever. If I cannot recall who this person is, that's not a person that's going to be excited and expecting my emails. Now, you can do some deeper digging, and I'm going to show you in BombBomb how you can see that a little bit more. Maybe you don't know who they are, but you can, oh, they are actually engaging in a lot of my content. Great. That's great. They're showing you that they're still interested. So let's keep them on. But it's just a really good first thing of like, do I know this person? Yes or no? That's something I need to look deeper into. Old, length of time. when did I get this email address? You would not believe how many people I have helped over the years at BombBomb. And they're like, oh yeah, I've got 3,000 emails. So I've got a great list. It's like, oh, well, when did you start building that? Oh, when I started my career about 25 years ago. An email you got 20 years ago is not an email you should probably be sending to now. It doesn't mean it's not a client who is stuck with you all the way, but the odds are if you've had this email for a very, very long amount of time, we need to review what's the engagement from that person because people die out. What's the kind of rule of thumb we use as far as time frame on what we consider maybe a little bit too old without engagement to send to, Kelsey?
Yeah, the general rule of thumb we use for age of contacts would be 18 months. So did you get this
Okay.
contact from someone within 18 months? But the little caveat there is that if they've been engaging with your emails in the last 6 months, we know that's still a good address. We know they're looking at your emails, so you can continue to reach out to them. But 18 months, that's starting to get a little bit old. But one additional thing I'll add there is even if you do have some old contacts that you haven't been in contact with in a while, you received that contact a while ago, that doesn't mean that you have to remove them completely and completely forget about them. That just means that maybe you need to reach out in a different manner. So whether that's giving them a call, sending them a text, or just reaching out with a one-to-one video instead of just having them on your mass email list, but just reaching out in more of a personalized way so that you can kind of reconnect.
I love that. That's a great strategy. Don't go just delete everybody. It's important to have this. This is how we build our businesses. But let's re-engage in a different way. Let's start to build that so that it can improve some of those sort of things. So love that. I think that's amazing advice, Kelsey. The source, I think, is a good thing to think about. Where did we get this email from? Did they opt in? Do we have the consent that we asked for? Right? We discussed that earlier, so you know what that is. The third bullet point there, did you purchase a list? If you purchased a list, delete those email addresses. We do not approve you sending purchased lists because guess what? We do not have those people's permission. They did not give you permission to email them. We don't have consent. And it is, I promise you, I know there are times that you'll get some responses off of the purchase list and it will turn into business. I'm not denying that that has worked for people. However, the amount of bounces, the amount of bad email addresses, the amount of potential abuse complaints, the amount of possibly negative things that are going to happen from a large purchase list far outweigh the hope of one person responding. And guess what? This is what's building our reputation. And these are the things we have to monitor. So we are a permission-based sender at BombBomb. If you do not have permission, if you purchase this list, they need to be out of the system right now. I know that sounds harsh. I know that sounds like very definitive. It is. This is how we have to be respectful of the other people, of BombBomb and the reputation we're building, of yourself and the reputation you're building. You don't want to burn 1,000 bridges to build one. That's just, it's not good business in a lot of ways. So keep that in mind. What is the source of these? Engagement, we've mentioned that a lot, so I don't think we need to go specifically into this. That really is kind of the trump card to a lot of these things. If you have an email address, you aren't sure who they are, you don't know when exactly you got it, but they've engaged in the last 6 months, they're opening your emails, they're engaging with your content. Okay, let's start to figure out who they are and where we got it. Let's do some research on that. But that's an okay person to have because they are still showing interest. They're showing that they want to be engaged. And then, of course, bounces and invalid email addresses. If you've got bad email addresses that you're just sending to over and over and over again, that is negatively affecting your reputation. So we want to make sure that we're filtering through some of that. Now, we within the BombBomb system have some things to help you. And I'm going to jump into our contacts tab real quick and show you a few things here that will help you with that. Kelsey, I would love actually, first and foremost, since we're on the bounces and the bad emails and those sort of things, one of the lists in BombBomb is what we call a suppression list. And would you just kind of describe that to people of what is that list and what are we adding on to that for people?
Yeah. The suppression list, the easiest way to explain those contacts is that is someone who has either marked abuse or contact has bounced in the past. So they're put into the suppression list, and basically that is a no send list. So our system knows to not send emails out to those contacts going forward. So we usually recommend just leaving that list as is because they've automatically been put in there for you. And as long as you leave them in that list, our system will know not to send to those contacts, even if that contact is living in another list down below. It's just something in the system that knows to not send to those, which helps protect our reputation, essentially.
Okay, so if, for example, if Kevin Andrews at gmail.com is on the suppression list, and it's also on an email list that I'm sending an email out to, our system will automatically compare the list you're sending to the suppression list and take those ones out on its own, even if they're on there.
Yeah, yep. As long as it's on the suppression list. And typically, if you dive into one of these lists down below, it'll show you for that specific contact where it says relationship, it'll show you if that contact is suppressed. You can always double check that way. But yeah, that is correct. It would know.
Awesome. And Amanda, I just saw your chat come in and I feel like I maybe paid you for this lead in, but you chatted in, can we just delete contacts in the suppression list if they don't want emails? I recommend almost universally, don't delete email addresses out of your suppression list. The only scenario you would do that is if there is, we'll say John Moore at gmail.com is in your suppression list, and John actually reaches out to you and says, hey, I'm not getting your emails. I want your emails. That's the only time you would pull them out of the suppression list, because you want emails to continue to go to him. Otherwise, do not go in and delete emails out of your suppression list. That is the safest way that BombBomb can help you make sure that emails are not going to people that don't want them. So great question. If you do want to remove them from the suppression list, there is a process you can do that, but 99% of the time, that is a really good safeguard that we're building on your behalf to make sure that there aren't these negative experiences for your recipients or for your sending reputation in there. So great question. Thank you for asking that as you were going in. A couple of the other things that I want to show here is the relationship score, which Kelsey, you already mentioned that a little bit as we were looking at this, and engagement with BombBomb content. So if you're emailing out of BombBomb directly, you can see I have this list of people, right? This is just kind of like my contacts, just a random list that's been built over time. And right here on the left side, you can see relationship. Well, I can actually sort by relationship in this. I can click on that and sort it by the lower relationships or the higher relationships. So let me see if I can refresh this. I've had this open for a while, so it might close down. Basically, the way our relationship score is built is all on engagement. Oh, good. I got logged out somehow. So it's all built on the engagement that you are receiving from these contacts. And we can track that and judge that and monitor all of that sort of stuff. So if you see a green, happy, smiley face, it shows that there's a good amount of engagement from this person. If there's a red, angry face, guess what? There's not as much engagement. You're not going to see as happy as stuff. If you want to see kind of the scores and how we do that, if you go to the top of the contacts tab, you can click this learn more button and explore that. It's not the most scientific thing that's ever been built, I promise you, but it is a really, really helpful way to start to review some of your lists and look at some of the content that's going on in here. So you can see, right here, invalid address suppressed. That is an old employee at BombBomb, doesn't work here anymore. That email address doesn't work. I don't want to be sending to that person. That's why they've been suppressed. Now, the other thing, and let me see if I can find my contacts. I want to go to this one. So if I sort by relationship, you'll see that it's going to start to put some of the lower ones here. They're kind of ready. We haven't gotten much from them. If I flip it the other way, oh, there's some that actually have happier faces. So if I click into this contact, I can actually look at what engagement have I gotten from this person on emails I've sent out of BombBomb. Email opened, link click. And these are the point systems that's going towards that relationship score. This is great for you to be able to monitor this and just see like what engagement am I getting. So if you have contacts in BombBomb, please come in here, review this content, update it. The more you clean your list, the more you keep it updated, the more you segment and organize to be able to send to specific people at specific times, the better your rates are going to be, the better your engagement is, the more emails are going to get to those right places. So I do want to know, and Tara, I don't know if you can find this as I'm talking. BombBomb Studios is a system we have here at BombBomb where it's on-demand courses where you can go learn about specific things, strategies, features, some of those sort of things. We do have a BombBomb Studios course all about uploading contacts and getting them in. So if you've never done this and you do have a membership that allows it, Tara, if you can find that link, great. If not, if you go into your account, actually, I'll show you where you can find BombBomb Studios. That'll make it easy. So if you come over here and click on your name up at the top right, there's a link in this drop down that says BombBomb Studios. So you can go into that and find the contacts tab there. So just know there are other resources that you'll have for that. All right. I know we're going fast and I know there's a lot of questions. I will definitely give some time to see if we can scroll through some of those at the end, but I want to make sure we get through this stuff. So Tara, thank you. You're amazing. You just sent the link for Bomb Studios. Thank you for doing that. The second thing we can do, besides cleaning our lists, is make sure that we're sending value. You can see that quote there. Emails with multimedia elements or formats with images and or videos have the highest performance. So one of the things we teased is, how does video affect this? Well, I've already showed you that videos get more clicks. It shows more engagement in the content. And this is really just proving that. And this is from, a HubSpot research blog that came out. So we want to have those multimedia things. But what about the content? What about the value in these? The 3 words we use that I want you to think about before you click send is this relevant? Is this timely? Is this expected? And I've given some questions or some things you can ask. Kelsey, I know you kind of built some of these questions as well on how to answer that and be effective in that. But really, it's reiterating a lot of the stuff that we've been talking about. What is the value the recipient is getting in this? Why would they want to open this? Is this something that's going to be wanted? What content did these contacts opt into? This is a big one, because you can have consent from somebody to send them emails. But if you're sending completely different value to what they're expecting, you're going to start to have negative responses on that. Hopefully they'll unsubscribe. They might abuse it and go, wait a second, this is not what I thought I was opting into, right? So think about that. If they opted in on a forum about specific content, send them that content. That's what they are wanting from you. Timely, right? It goes back to that kind of 18-month time period. But when did I get these email addresses? When did they last engage? And making sure that we're staying up to date with that, and that it's timely to when we've gotten their information. And last but not least, expected, right? Did we get consent to send in the first place? Yeah, then they will be expecting our emails. What's been their recent engagement? The more engagement, the more they're expecting our content that we're sending. And I threw this last one on, just a question to ask yourselves. Are we regularly sending consistently to people so that they are expecting content? Or are we just blasting out random emails a few times a year? Those are not expected at all. If we're just like, oh man, I've got whatever information, I'm just going to send that to everybody right now. We want to be specific. We want to segment down so that we can actually build expected content for these people. So keep that in mind there. Anything else you would add to that, Kelsey? I know you kind of taught me a little bit about some of this stuff as well. So
yeah, I think that was a great overview. Yeah.
Cool. Awesome. All right. So the third thing, and kind of the final one, and I'm going to dive a little bit deeper into this as well, is it is really important for you to build your email for engagement. You've heard us say this word a million times in the last 45 minutes. Engagement, engagement, engagement. The more engagement you're getting, the better your reputation is going to be. The more people you're going to keep on your list. But we need to be responsible and actually build our email in a way that's going to get engagement. So every email that we send is training people on if they're going to open the next one. Are they going to engage in the next one? Are they going to look forward and expect more of our content? So let's look into this real quick. What does a well-formatted email look like? First and foremost, the subject line is something that's really, really important to think about. I always think about the subject line like the cover of a book. Have you ever kind of looked at the cover of a book and be like, oh, the title's interesting, but this is just weird. Put it back on the shelf. I'm not going to read that. That's their first chance to get us interested. A subject line is our first chance to get somebody interested in an email. It doesn't matter how good the body of the email is if they don't open it, right? So we have to take advantage of that. Some ways to think about this. What's the value in it? Can I tease that value in the subject line itself? Can I build curiosity in the subject line? Is there a question I could ask or something that can make them go, oh, that's interesting. I want to know more about that. Absolutely. 2 really great ways to think about this. You can see I wrote 7 words. My rule of thumb is I try to keep my subject lines to 7 words or less. Why? This. Over 50% of emails are opened on phones. This screen is not very big. It cannot fit more than 7 or so words, right? So it's important that the curiosity, that the value isn't 10 words deep and doesn't even show up on the screen. If they can't see it, they're not going to click on it. They're not going to understand that. So try to keep them short and concise. The other thing I put on there, if you're putting a video in an email, put the word video in the subject line. People are more likely, it increased our open rates by almost 8% when we did some A/B testing on this. Exact same email, exact same content. All we did was put the word video in the subject line and not have it in other ones. 8% higher open rate because we told them there's a video. People want to engage with videos. It's proven time and time again, and it's getting more extreme. YouTube is, if not the number 1, the number 2 search engine on the web right now because people want videos. That's how we want to engage. So tell them what they're getting in that. So make sure you're being really strategic with your subject line. The next thing I want to teach you is It's a piece that I call text wrapping. So it actually has the opening text bullet point and the ending text bullet point in this. But we want to have text above and below our video. One piece that you were talking about, Kelsey, is the text to image ratio. You don't want to just send a video and have nothing else in that email. That's going to start to be like, wait, what's in this email? What's this content? It's a link. That's when they start asking some of those questions, those algorithms that are going, should I deliver this? Should I not? Text is going to show personalization. So we want to make sure we do that. The text above the video should be all about encouraging the video play below. So personalize it, put the person's name or put the reason you're reaching out, and then put something of take a look at the video below for more on this. Take a look, click play, watch the video below, something actionable so that they actually click on that. The text underneath it is just the important information that you talked about in the video. I always think about leaving voicemails when you get a voicemail from somebody before we could just like read the transcript on our phones. And you were like, oh my gosh, I missed the phone number in there. Now I have to listen to the whole voicemail again to find that phone number. That's a negative experience. That's not a good experience. We don't want our clients to have to do that. So let's give them the bullet points below. Let's give them, if we're setting up a meeting, let's give them the location, the time, the date, all of those details that are important for people to know so that they don't have to reiterate and rewatch that video again, just for the sake of getting the information we already talked about. So text above, text below, and be strategic with that. And then of course, the video. And there's multiple elements to this. One of the big ones there is that animated preview. So for those of you that might be a little bit newer to BombBomb, the first 3 seconds of your video is what we build this looping preview that gets embedded in the email with, right? Use that. Make sure you're taking advantage of that. You can see I used my phone there and just held something up to personalize it, to let John know this email is for you. That's why you should click on this video. The app that I'm using, I know we always get... Yes, Gabriel, you're already throwing stuff in there. I love it. We got some people already giving this. If you're an iPhone user, Big is the name of the app that I use and Gabriel uses. So you can go to the App Store and search that. Really easy to use. I know there's other ones, so I'm not saying one is always better than the other, but I've used Big. If you're an Android user, there's one called Large Text that I know some of our employees have used. Same kind of thing. But you also don't have to use your phone. You can use a whiteboard. You can use a notepad. You can use a sticky note. Just something that you can hold up and visually personalize it to your recipient will get you more video plays, I promise. So use that animated preview. The other thing is video length. We talk about this a lot, and I've gotten this question a million times over my time here at BombBomb. How long should my video be? My general rule of thumb is 60 seconds or less. I try to keep it 60 seconds or less. Why? Because we build a banner for you of the length of the video and we automatically put that on your video. People are more likely to watch a 60-second video than a 1-minute video. That's basically the same amount of time, but just the word seconds from a psychological standpoint feels like, oh, I've got 60 seconds. Oh, I don't know if I have a minute right now. We react really quickly. Our brain processes this stuff. So use that to your advantage. Keep that under 60 seconds if possible. Now, the other caveat that I always tell people as well is the longer you've known somebody, the more relationship, the longer your video can be. As long as the value is there and you've built trust and rapport and relationship with this person, they will watch a little bit longer video. But if it's like a new lead or a new person you've never met before, 30 seconds, keep that as short as you can because you haven't established that trust. You haven't established that your videos are worth watching yet. So we want to make sure we do some of those sort of things. So, and then of course, I didn't touch on this before, but CTA, always make sure you've got a clear call to action. You can put a CTA in your video, little button that pops up in the corner. So take advantage of that. Make sure your client knows what you want them to do. One of the things when I'm talking about email engagement is the point is not to get them to read your email. Yes, that's important in the step. But the point of this is to start conversations, is to build relationship, is to build connection. They're not going to read one email and go, sweet, bye. You have to work on that. So this is one of our first opportunities to build that trust, build that rapport, start those conversations. So make sure that your recipient knows what you want them to do next. So just keep that in mind. Here's kind of a reiteration of some of the things that we talked about here, but make sure that you are in control of this. I know bigger companies are making changes that we can't control. Guess what? We can't control if we abide by them and if we're following those rules. So clean your lists, check them every 6 months, put a little calendar thing on your calendar every 6 months that I'm going to spend an hour reviewing my list real quick. I know it's not fun. I know it's not something that feels like, okay, this is going to create a lot of business for me right now, but I promise you long-term, really smart and will help you out. Always send value, relevant, timely, expected. Oh, I had a typo there. Dang it. Relevant, timely, and expected, I guess. I don't know. But make sure you're abiding by those couple of things. It will get you better engagement. Engagement is the big thing we're looking for. And then build your email. Be smart, be intentional with the content, the subject line, the text that we're putting in around the video itself, the CTA, all of those sort of things. So I know I went through this stuff quick because I wanted to make sure we got done at time for those of you that do need to jump. I will be sending this slide deck and these slides with the recording in the email. So if you need to review back to this slide specifically and just have it as a resource, I'll make sure that that's in there. So for those of you that are needing that, I've seen a couple of chats going, oh, could we get that example? Could I see that stuff again? We will include these slides with the recording itself. So, whew, man, we just went over a lot. And I know it's a little overwhelming, but just know this. You're okay. BombBomb's got you. We are taking care of you if you're sending out of our system. We're helping you with the changes that are happening right now. So don't stress, don't freak out. But let's be intentional with this and let's kind of take control of some of this sort of stuff. We'll send you that follow-up as well. For those of you that have to jump pretty quick, I do want to let you know what's coming in March. This is going to be really, really fun. For those of you, I know we get chats every time of like, oh, are you going to show me how to use this? Are you going to show me features? Are you going to do some technical stuff? This is one you're not going to want to miss. So it's a little ways away. It's a little more than a month since we did this one so early because of these releases and these deliverability changes. But we're going to be talking about BombBomb's advanced video features in March. And teaser, spoiler, we've got something new and exciting that I'm really, really excited to tell you about. So if that's something you're interested in, Tara, if you can potentially grab the link, I'll try and do it as well as I'm starting to scan through questions and things. But if you can grab the link for people to sign up, for those of you out there, if you go to bombbomb.com/webinar, it's up there. It's the top one. It's the March one. Get yourself signed up. Get the reminder emails. This is going to be a really fun one that you're not going to want to miss. So I believe, I got to look, but I think it's like mid-March. It's going to be like March 17th. I don't know. I'm not looking at my calendar right this second. I probably should have put that on the slide, but there you go. So thank you for those of you that I know have to jump. I know we're at the top of the hour. I will stick around and scan through Q&A. I have not had a chance to keep up on that because I wanted to keep things rolling. But thank you for being here. You guys mean the world to us. You really, really do. Thanks for trusting us. We'll send the recording. We'll send the links. We will make sure to follow up with you with all of this content that we talked about today. But thank you. If you got to jump, we appreciate you. You mean so much to the BombBomb family, and we really do look at this as a family, as a community. You guys are all incredible. So I'm going to stop sharing there. Kelsey, did anything, I know I just talked for a long time about some of those things. Did anything from your kind of technical side of things, thinking about delivery, was there anything triggered in the email engagement stuff and any of those kind of strategic things people can be actionable with? Was there anything that kind of got your antennas up at all?
Yeah, I know that there may be some questions about unengaged and suppression list, and maybe if you're willing to share again, we can look at those. I know we have some folks jumping, but we might as well take a look if we still have some here.
Sure.
There were some questions about unengaged contacts, and we do have a list that is generated automatically for you in BombBomb. You'll see that one at the bottom called unengaged contacts, and Kevin currently has 0 contacts on there.
That's because I'm such a good sender, you know?
Yep, doing great. But what that is contacts who have received at least 3 emails within the last 6 months and haven't opened any of them. So they're automatically put into that list. So if you are looking to kind of take a closer look at those folks who might not be engaging with your emails, this would be a great place to start. Keep in mind, it does take 6 months for those contacts to come into this list. But if you have some contacts in there in your account, you might as well take a look and kind of see if you maybe need to reach out in a more personalized way. Another thing I wanted to mention on the suppression list, there was some questions about deleting contacts. Something to keep in mind is that this suppression list does not count towards your contact limit. So great. That's a great thing to keep in mind, and it's a good reason to just leave those contacts in the suppression list. They're not counting against your contacts, and it's keeping us all safe as far as sending reputation. So that's why we recommend just leaving them in there.
Those are awesome. I honestly didn't even know about the unengaged contacts list. So I'm learning new stuff with all of you as well. So Kelsey, thank you for talking about that. And I love that you talked about how it doesn't count towards your contact count at all. Just really important to know that, like, okay, I don't need to worry about these. The more that's on there, honestly, the better. We want to know the people that shouldn't be receiving emails because then we can control stuff. So Thank you for highlighting those. That's really awesome. I'm looking through some of the Q&A, and I know some of these came very early in the webinar. So if any of you are still here, James, John, Beth, there's some questions about I'm not getting the engagement I want. I'm getting email opens, but I'm not getting video plays, things like that. Hopefully, some of the stuff I talked about with the animated preview will help with the video play. I promise you it will. If you do those and you're intentional with those first few seconds, you can do things that will influence people and make them more likely to watch. So Beth, if you're still here, I would highly recommend getting the app or having something to help with that. Kelsey, could you touch on, and I know this can open a can of worms. I don't want to go super deep, but people are asking a lot about spam filters and how do I make sure my emails get delivered into the inbox? And what are some tips maybe that you've talked to people with? Because I know I've got some things that I usually say, but I'd love to get your perspective on that.
Yeah. Definitely a lot of the stuff that you discussed here as far as increasing your reputation, that's a big one. But it also does get looked at for that specific email. So the content of that email, but just like Kevin talked about already, text to image ratio is a big one. The kind of wording that you're using can also come into play. So if you're using wording that seems sort of marketing-ish, really general, that kind of salesy kind of language, that can be more likely to end up in a spam filter. But if you're using something that's a little more conversational and shows that you're familiar with that recipient, that's more likely to end up in the main inbox. So there's definitely lots of little details like that, but focusing on reputation is a big one. And then focusing on how you kind of organize that specific email before you send it out.
Yeah, I think honestly that slide of how to build an email is going to help tremendously of getting your stuff into the inboxes. Just showing that this is personalized, that this has attention, that we put a lot of thought into this. The more we can show that in the content, the more likely they're going to put it in the place that we want it to be. So I did get some questions about the Gmail recipients list as I was showing my screen here. That's with some of our integrations and some of those sort of things. We can actually bring your Gmail list over if you set up the Gmail integration. So that's what that is. I mean, I have like 8,000 emails because it's just all the random people I've sent to. So know that you can do that if you want to connect to Gmail. But again, that's also one that doesn't count towards our contact list because those are from Gmail, right? Those are kind of hosted in that. So are you looking at the Q&A at all, Kelsey?
Yeah, I know we have a lot in there.
Jared coming in 2 minutes.
But one of the last question that I want to answer here, and then we'll hop off because we're kind of running a little bit long, is several people have asked, can we get our reputation score? And I honestly don't know the answer to that. Is that something that's visible? Is that something that you can, I don't think it's like a 1 to 1,000 scale and you're a 600, so you're safe. Like, I don't think it's like a credit score kind of thing, but is there a way to see how we're being looked at and how we're being watched at all?
That I would not be the best resource for that as far as like the general overall sending score, but I do know for our customers, we do kind of keep a bit of an eye on how someone's sending reputation is. And so that is something that's kind of saved with your account, but that would only be in regard to your email sends out of BombBomb. But more generally, that would be something I wouldn't know how to get that information. Yeah.
Hey, we always say here at BombBomb, we're not going to just fake it with you. We're going to tell you what we know. We're going to be honest with you. We're going to try to lead you in the right direction. But sometimes we just don't know everything. So, well, thank you all very much. I know there's a lot more questions around this. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being a part of this journey with us. Thank you for letting us guide. Hopefully we put this in a way that's feels a little more digestible than other information that you've heard. Because that's what we want. We want to make sure that kind of that every person can come in and go, okay, I see what's changing. I understand that. I know I'm taken care of, but here's some actionable things I can do as well. So thank you for being a part of that. Kelsey, thank you for all of the expertise, all the added elements you bring to this. I mean, the conversations you've had over the years, I know have gone a lot deeper than some of the ones I've had. So thank you for bringing that. I appreciate it immensely.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for having me, Kevin.
To everybody out there, let us know if we can help. Let us know if you need anything. Otherwise, go to our support site, go to BombBomb Studios, learn. We really want to be here to continue to help you. We want you to see the best success you possibly can with your videos. And no matter how you're sending them or how you're using it, we want to make sure that we're here to guide you through that. It's always been a big thing for us. So for me personally, thank you. This is one of my favorite parts of the month. I love spending time with you all. Tara, thank you for monitoring a lot of questions and a lot of chats. You're a rock star. I apologize if we did not get to your specific question, but we'll send you this recording and maybe we reiterated it in there somewhere. I hope so. Thank you all so much. Happy February. Stay warm, stay healthy, have some fun, send some videos. Have a great month. We'll see you next March, okay? All right. Thanks, everybody.